Well, I don't think anybody who watched President Joe Biden's overseas trip did so without cringing. If you're conservative, you probably cringed outwardly, but let's be real, even liberals were cringing inside themselves. I mean, I was one of the last people, I have to admit, I was one of the last people to talk about Biden's mental state because I thought it was mean, and I thought that there were policy things that we should be arguing about before we talk about his mental state. I thought, that's not nice. Let's argue on policy. Let's not get personal. Well, I'm also the first one to admit that maybe I was wrong, because take a look at some of these clips. These are not just gaffes. These are what I would consider to be serious national security risks. First up here is Joe Biden committing well, I'll let you watch it for yourself. Take a look.
What do you say to Vladimir Putin?
To answer the first question, I'm laughing too. Well, look, I mean, he has made clear that the answer is, I believe he has in the past essentially acknowledged that he was, there are certain things that he would do or did do. But look, when I was asked that question on air, I answered it honestly. But it's not much of I don't think it matters a whole lot in terms of this next meeting we're about to have. The second question was I'd verify first and then trust.
Do you ever feel so uncomfortable that your skin literally starts to itch? The first time I watched that video, my arms actually started to itch. Also, his laugh at the beginning of that video, did Kamala Harris teach him how to laugh in public? This is so cringeworthy, you would think that it couldn't get worse, but it does. Take a look at this video.
President Ramaphosa, President Moon, he just committed.
And the President of South Africa.
And the President of South Africa, as I said earlier.
Oh, you did?
I certainly did.
But you get to mention twice, so.
I'll go over that again. Let me tell you, we're delighted. Mr. President, I'm glad to say we're joined by Prime.
Did you hear that laughter? That's not laughing with Joe Biden. That is laughing at Joe Biden because he couldn't recall something that had happened just one moment before. Again, you think maybe, well, that's the worst of it. It's just that bad. Well, no. Now we're going to see Biden literally get lost. And before I show this video, let me just preface this with saying, I've been in big conference centers, big hotels. Sometimes you don't know which way to turn when you're in a big building, a big piece of infrastructure. In this video, Joe Biden gets lost in a tent. Watch.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President? How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
They always do.
Meanwhile, of course, as Joe Biden is fumbling around overseas, Russia is conducting the largest military exercises since the Cold War. This is just before President Biden met with Vladimir Putin. So with me now to discuss the implications for national security, he is the former chief of staff at the National Security Council, former CIA analyst, and now the president of the Center for Security Policy, my good friend, Fred Fleitz. Fred, good to see you.
Hey, Liz, good to be here.
All right, Fred, give me your analysis of this. First of all, Biden's meeting with Putin, and contrast that meeting with what Putin is doing on the national stage right now.
Well, look, Biden's people are going to say that there were major achievements at the summit. There were some minor ones. We agreed to exchange ambassadors again, start some arms control talks that Russia's probably going to dominate. But it's what happened after the summit that we really need to talk about. And you focused on it well. Biden looked terrible. He looked incompetent. He looked like he didn't know what he's talking about. He said that he laid out 18 areas where the Russians aren't allowed to conduct cyber attacks against in the U.S. Does that mean the rest of the country they can? You know, but the most stunning thing to me, Liz, was when Putin, who was vibrant and confident, he said that Biden called him and walked back the killer remark that Biden had made to ABC News. And then Putin went on to call the U.S. and the U.S. military killers. I mean, we gave Putin a platform where he spewed all this propaganda, all these lies about the U.S., and Biden, on the other hand, looked really, really weak.
He did look weak. I mean, I thought he looked beyond weak. First of all, apologizing to Vladimir Putin is something no U.S. president should do. The American people should not stand for that, to hear a U.S. president apologizing to Putin. But when you see these gaffes, when you see this seemingly mental incompetence from the president, how big of a national security threat or a national security risk do you consider that to be?
I think it's very serious, and I agree with you. This isn't laughing a matter. I don't like to talk about it, but this perception of weakness by the United States and the U.S. president is destabilizing. We know our enemies respect strength. Now, you may not have liked Donald Trump, but he was a strong, decisive president. We were a strong, decisive superpower under him. And I think the world is beginning to realize that that's not the case anymore under Joe Biden. They see a confused foreign policy, a foreign policy that's not serious, that's focused on climate change and social engineering. And you can imagine our enemies are just working very hard to find ways to exploit this.
Oh, I would think so. I mean, after that army recruitment video and that CIA, the woke CIA recruitment video came out, I would imagine Vladimir Putin gave all of his intelligence services the weekend off, because they certainly aren't going to have to work very hard to get around that kind of U.S. intelligence. Go back to what you said a moment ago, though, about this 16 or 18 areas of infrastructure that Joe Biden said, please, Mr. Putin, please don't attack us in these areas. First of all, if I'm Vladimir Putin, those are the exact areas that I attack, of course. Joe Biden's defenders say that that was his version of giving a red line to Vladimir Putin. Fred, do you have any confidence whatsoever that if Vladimir Putin does wage a cyber attack in one of those areas of infrastructure, those 16 or 18, that Joe Biden would consider it a red line crossed and would do anything about it in retaliation?
I don't think he'd do anything. And I don't like hearing Democrats make red lines. A lot of them were drawn during the Obama administration. They were all ignored, which weakened us more. And Putin almost laughed this off. He claimed that it's the U.S. committing cyber crimes and that Russia has asked for information against cyber criminals attacking Russia, and we wouldn't respond, which I think is laughable. But it just goes to show that Putin had no regard whatsoever for anything Biden said. This was a PR disaster in just about any way you look at it.
Right. And when Joe Biden says that America is back, diplomacy is back, I always want to ask, back to what? Back to what? Are we going back to President Obama and his apology tour? Are we going back to our adversaries taking advantage of us? Because I don't see a cohesive foreign policy strategy coming from him. What I see is him allowing adversarial nations to take advantage of us.
Well, America's back as a pliant member of the European club, where Europeans have a veto over foreign policy, where our enemies know they can walk all over us. I hate to say, this is clearly going to be worse than the Obama years. I'm very worried where our national security is going.
Ugh, and that's so troubling to hear you say that, because you certainly have your finger on the pulse.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me. Thanks.